every year, and this year
Usually, we've always done churches.
we've always done churches. This year we're going to try, and I don't think we have this all secured yet, but we're going to try to do the synagogue on Drake. Is that where our shalom is? The mosque on Lake Street, and the Latter-day Saints meeting hall on Linwood. So those are three places near each other that we'll just wander from one to the next, and we're going to find out about their history and their architecture. So I think that's everything. So let me hand the mic over to Mary. Oh, and I forgot to introduce Mary. This is Mary Humstone, and she has done a whole lot of research on this property, and she'll tell you all about that, probably way better than I ever could. So thank you, Mary. Wait. Okay. I'm not the expert on this property, Rose Brinks is, but I'm going to start us off, and she told me she would correct any mistakes that I made. So the reason I got involved in this is in 1985, my husband and I moved right across the street here, and Rose was the first person that we met. So we've been friends for almost 40 years. Now I'm her neighbor to the west. And as a historic preservationist, of course, I was interested in this place, but Rose and I together fought many incursions on this land. The first one since I came was the city of Fort Collins proposing a bike trail that would have gone down this railroad right-of-way right in the middle of her property and right next to our kitchen window over there. Since then, there have been other ones. The Greeley pipeline was the latest one, which I'll talk about a little later. Okay. Okay. That's probably better, right? Okay. So around, I think it was 2010, Rose and I started talking about listing this property on the National Register of Historic Places, and I helped her with the nomination, although she wrote most of it because she'd done this really, really extensive history of this piece of property called From Provost to Brinks. And so she had all of the history. I helped her put it into the nomination form, and it was listed on the National Register in 2010. So first of all, I just want to say how incredible it is that this piece of property exists today. Rose has researched this back to 1858, when John Provost actually filed a homestead on 160 acres here, most of which is still intact. And that in itself is incredible, but if you talk to the Brinks, you'll understand that as Fort Collins started to develop, people would see, they look at an aerial map and they'd see this big tract of open land and think, oh, this is ripe for development. We can put a pipeline through here. We can put a transmission line through here. There's a railroad right of way. They're not using it, but we can use it for whatever utility we have. We need ditches, and put ditches. They have 3 ditches through this property. So having managed to keep this intact for it's 165-year-old documented history is just really incredible. So, thank you. So, 1865, 1858. The Poudre River, of course, was there. It looked different. Rivers change. Right in front of the house here, and crossing over here, this is the Overland Trail. It was first the Cherokee Trail, and then it became called the Overland Trail in 1864. And so, of course, Overland Trail Road is named after that. So that was the main route to get from Transcontinental Railroad, it was the route to get up to Transcontinental and open up the rest of the country. So this is a really, really critical spot. And John Provost took advantage of that. He had a ferry that he used to cross people over the Poudre River. The Poudre River was a real river then. They hadn't taken out all the water here and there for agriculture, so it was a big river, and people needed the ferry to cross the river. So he had a prime spot. This is also incredible farmland here. There are accounts that people, reporters came out from Fort Collins and called this a modern Eden, or a paradise. You could grow just about anything here. So that was a very good reason to settle here as well. So we have the river, we have the Overland Trail. Bingham Hill Road was laid out as Risk Canyon Road in 1870, so that was one of the boundaries of the property. And then to the west, it was the hogbacks that we're going to be walking towards a little later. So that's kind of our historical context of where we are. So the property has been, as you can imagine, over 165 years through a number of owners, and I'm not really that good with dates these days, but the Provost owned it from 1858 to 1879. At that time, John Provost had a Native American wife. After Custer was defeated, the U.S. government started pressuring all the Native Americans to go to reservations. And eventually his wife, Mary, and their children moved to, which one was it? Pine Ridge, thank you. And he gave up the farm soon after that. So the next owner was the Union Pacific Railroad. And I'm going to talk more about this railroad line that I keep pointing to, but that became the Greeley, Salt Lake, and Pacific Railroad. At the time, the Union Pacific purchased this property in order to build their railroad, which they said they were going to build from Greeley through Fort Collins, up Poudre Canyon, and on through western Colorado, Salt Lake City. And actually, they weren't really planning to do this, but they caught wind that Burlington Northern was planning to have a route through Poudre Canyon and west, which would compete with their route across southern Wyoming. So they kind of pretended they were going to do the same thing. They started grading up there, but they never went really past Bellevue. They went south to Stout, to the limestone sandstone quarries, later north to the limestone quarries. So Union Pacific owned the property for about a little less than 10 years. When they sold it, they reserved their 100-foot right-of-way. So up until the Brinks ownership of this property, this swath was still owned by a railroad company, 100 feet wide, right down the middle of the property. So the Union Pacific sold the property to Roland Herring in 1898, and Herring is really significant because he developed this really intensively for farming. So he was the first one really to have a big market garden here. He had orchards that he had probably 20 different varieties of apple trees. So there were orchards all the way scattered through this property. One of them, his main orchard, was up just to the west of Bingham Hill Cemetery, which later became Roy Jewell's pig farm. But he had other ones throughout the property. He had apple trees, cherry trees, and plum trees. He grew onions, cabbages, peas, beets, whatever. There are descriptions of just trainloads of his produce leaving here. Before that, there were, horses and wagons taking all this produce to market. People would come to the farm itself to buy directly from him. So it was a really, really successful producing farm. Until around 1930, there was a big drought that affected the farm, and then Herring died in 1935. So that was